The long-awaited open beta for Guilty Gear Strive began last week, and concluded just a few days ago. And even though I've barely touched fighting games over the last couple of years, I decided to participate since it looks really good, and Arc System Works finally decided to hop aboard the Rollback Netcode hype train. The beta features every announced character except Anji and Ino, and started a few days early for people with media passes, and then the next day or so after for those who pre-ordered the digital version of the game, and then finally for everyone else. While it was just the media people and pre-orderers playing, a lot of positive things were being said about the netcode. Sadly, when the floodgates opened and the beta went fully public, the game servers were overloaded and pretty much everyone lost a whole day. There was a bit of a workaround discovered which required logging into a different PlayStation Network account and you would be able to at least access offline content like training mode. But it wasn't rock solid because the game could still boot you back to the title screen after some time. At least it did that for me. Thankfully, ArcSys extended the beta by 2 days to make up for it, which is awesome, and it worked fine from then on. Obviously, the big question that everyone actually cares about is, how good is the rollback? Did they flub it like others have in their poor attempt to make their own bastardized solution? In this era of COVID living, the online experience is now paramount to gaming with others, and fighting games are no exception. So I'm very pleased to say that Guilty Gear Strive's rollback is actually excellent, like genuinely really good. You can't see the numbers on screen right now because I had to depend on saved replays because I didn't expect to make a video like this, but in matches I played with friends who live across the country, we averaged around 100 to 120 milliseconds or so of ping, but the game stayed perfectly playable. In fact, I saw some North American streamers play in the Japan server and ping would hit up to 240, and the game would still miraculously look fine. A number that high would have been utterly disastrous on delay-based netcode. It wouldn't be playable in the slightest, but in this beta, it was. To see Guilty Gear with rollback this good felt unreal, especially considering that it accomplished it before other, bigger Japanese fighting games could. Street Fighter V and Tekken 7 both have their own variation of rollback netcode, but they're just not very good. They still tend to suffer from teleporting and other weird lag shenanigans that proper rollback implementation shouldn't allow, as demonstrated by many Western fighting games and now Guilty Gear 2. It's really frustrating to watch otherwise competent developers say no to GGPO, which is literally free, just to botch everything up on their own. Rollback netcode has existed for over a decade now, and it's embarrassing that it's taking this long to be widespread. What's weirder is the fact that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite had better netcode than Street Fighter V, but Capcom never thought to just bring it over. I guess we'll just have to wait and see and cross our fingers for the eventual Street Fighter VI to solve this issue. But hopefully the positive reception to Strive's netcode will at least open Japanese developers' eyes a bit more, and they'll take this issue more seriously. Now that the high priority stuff is out of the way, there's a couple of other things to discuss about the beta. First, it thankfully included training mode, so people could practice with new or old characters in peace, especially Nagoriyuki and Giovanna, both new to the series and available in the beta. It was a fully featured training mode too, with every tool you would expect from it. Some fighting game betas of the past didn't even offer this much, so it's nice to see it here. The second thing, and the only aspect of the game I feel the need to complain about, is lobbies. The lobbies in the Guilty Gear Strive beta were awful. I do like the idea of ranked being represented as floors in a tower as opposed to other typical means, because having a number like your win-loss ratio constantly under your name can feel extremely discouraging. Because, let's be honest, most people don't necessarily enjoy having the fact that they suck at the game be a constant reminder. But the execution could be more efficient. Arc System Works seems to have an obsession over the idea of revolutionizing the fighting game lobby system by turning it into its own unique experience, but it's wholly unnecessary and only complicates the most basic aspects of finding matches online. There is a quick match option that lets you skip all the tedious garbage, but if you're looking to play with friends for some casual sets, it's an absolute fucking nightmare. You have to meet up in a specific room, stand around a specific part of said room, and manually rotate as if you were all standing right next to each other. An interesting gimmick on paper, sure, but it immediately turns annoying. First off, if you're not standing near a designated matchmaking spot in the room, you're instantly teleported to one, which may be on the totally opposite side of the room, meaning everyone else in your group has to set out to find you. Second, there's no rematch button. This is probably just for the beta to get players to play as many different people as possible for the sake of data, so it's likely not a huge deal and should be in the final game. Hopefully. But after a match is over, you have to wait for your avatars to complete their little animations and automated messages before moving on to the next. And then there's the news section taking up the entire right side of the screen that you can't close. It's mind-boggling how insistent Arc System Works is on pushing these awful lobbies down everyone's throats. This is like the 5th game or something that does it, and a huge portion of the player base hates it every time. It only underlines the common criticism that Japanese fighting game developers take 2 steps forward but 1 step back. The lobby system is terrible, unintuitive, and needlessly complicated while also missing crucial quality of life features. If it were somehow slightly worse, it would probably undo the benefits of the game having good netcode. So please, for the love of God, stop pushing these awful lobbies so much, Arc System Works. Please let your games be great all around instead of being great in a couple aspects and terrible in others. Please. Otherwise, the game is fantastic. The characters look and feel great, the R-code system has a ton of information, training mode is useful, the music is awesome, and obviously the netcode is stellar. I expect the other offline modes to be just as good when the full game is out. It's really only the awful lobbies holding this game back from being a genuine heavy hitter in every conceivable respect so far. I suppose if there's one thing about gameplay I'm a little iffy on, it's the wall break mechanic. I'm still not totally sure if it's preferable over normal corner play. Also, my initial impressions on Chip aren't very positive, because he feels pretty damn weak. Like he has to put in way more work to do the same amount of damage as others while also having less health. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. I'm not that good at the game anyway. I also noticed that forward air dashing is also delayed, but instant air dashing is still possible to do backwards. An interesting change that did feel like a downgrade at first, but it seems like jumping in can still be pretty strong regardless, so ultimately it seems fine. All this talk about netcode and such leads me to another fighting game coming out this year, the King of Fighters 15. SNK has been doing weekly character reveal trailers for a while now, with the latest being Chizuru, who hasn't been seen in a mainline KOF title in a hot minute. She looks great, as does most of the characters shown so far. KOF 14 had a bad reputation for its graphics because SNK wanted to move on from 2D sprites in order to save money, which is understandable considering 13 almost bankrupted them. But their lack of experience with 3D modeling was pretty apparent. But Samurai Showdown looked better, and now KOF 15 is looking even better than that, with improved lighting and shading, better textures, and more colorful backgrounds. But sadly, 14 and Samsho also had a reputation for their poor online experience, mainly their delay-based netcode. And with the Strive beta putting Rollback even more in the spotlight than it already is, people are preemptively worrying about its implementation in KOF 15, which is completely understandable. However, I think, or hope, SNK is already fully aware of the community's wish for more rollback. The positive feedback to its implementation in Garo Mark of the Wolves and the King of Fighters 2002 Unlimited match has assuredly reached their ears already, and news of Strive's success on this front is likely known to them now as well. Aside from that, KOF 15 is likely still about 8 to 9 months off, so there's still plenty of time for SNK to let us know what the netcode situation is going to be. So let's not be all doom and gloom just yet. If they open pre-orders for the game first, then we should definitely be raising our voices. But until then, let's calmly remind them from time to time how important rollback is to us. I absolutely think it's realistic for them to put rollback in the game, but the worst case scenario on that front is that the game launches with delay-based netcode and only gets rollback added later. Now granted, it would be better than never receiving it at all, But for many, that just means the days before the rollback update is released is practically just beta testing. Players are getting way more stubborn about this subject, which is an appropriate response to the equal stubbornness of Japanese developers refusing to even consider rollback until now, and some people are outright refusing to buy any game without it. Period. KOF 15 needs it, but above all else, the game needs it on day one, because first impressions matter, and thanks to Strive's beta having great netcode and being the first experience of the game for many, the anticipation is higher than ever. That pretty much concludes my thoughts on the Strive beta and the future of KOF 15. The success of the beta marks a huge win for the FGC in its fight for a long overdue better online experience. Thanks to obstinate Japanese developers, this genre has been frustratingly behind others in terms of online gaming standards for a long time, so it's nice to see some improvement. We're finally seeing other big games actually try and offer what Killer Instinct already did 7 years ago, followed by countless indie titles since then. The future for fighting games might be looking pretty bright. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.
Ninja. Chip. Win.